picked the wrong place to come to, mister.
The lady sent for me, not you.
Heads, I'm gonna kill you, mister. Tails, you can play her a tune.
Play me a tune. Play something else.
Hello and welcome to Cinecrisis. If I were to mention Joan Crawford and Western in the same sentence, it might sound inherently incongruent. After all, Crawford, one of the Golden Age's most glamorous and seductive stars, would seem ill-suited for a Western, let alone one made by the Poverty Row studio Republic Pictures. But that's exactly what makes 1954's Johnny Guitar so intriguing at first glance. And as you slowly peel back the layers behind the facade of this rather unassuming film, you find a hidden and underappreciated classic. Crawford plays Vienna, a saloon owner whose property on the outskirts of town is prime real estate for the inevitable railroad encroachment. This puts her directly in the crosshairs of two of the town's most affluent landowners, Emma Small, played by Mercedes McCambridge, and John McIvers, played by Vorbnine. Things get even more heated when Emma's brother is shot dead in a stagecoach holdup, and all signs lead to the outlaw named the Dancing Kid, played by Scott Brady, a friend and lover of Vienna's. As the townspeople descend into mob mentality fueled by Emma's rage, Vienna calls on an old friend for assistance, a man by the name of Johnny Guitar, played by Sterling Hayden, a man who carries no gun. Johnny Guitar was directed by Nicholas Ray, a filmmaker you may not know by name but will probably recognize his resume, helming pictures such as King of Kings, They Live by Night, 55 Days at Peking, and of course his magnum opus, Rebel Without a Cause. Republic was the studio that specialized in low-budget westerns and serials, so to be putting out a movie like this seems like a big deal. For comparison, the same year as Johnny Guitar, here's a sampling of Republic's other releases. Westerns like Phantom Stallion starring Rex Allen, noirs like Hell's Half Acre, and cheap sci-fis for the kids like Tobor the Great. Let's talk about the cast, and while we'll get to Joan Crawford in a minute, the other actress that absolutely dominates throughout Johnny Guitar is Mercedes McCambridge as Emma Small, our villain. McCambridge had an extensive career in radio dating back to the 1930s and was even described by Orson Welles as the world's greatest living radio actress. Her film career took off in 1949 when she co-starred alongside Broderick Crawford in All the King's Men, for which she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. After Johnny Guitar, she was again nominated for an Oscar for her work in Giant, and subsequently went on to guest star in numerous TV series of the day. But perhaps strangest of all, she provided the voiceover work for the demon Pazuzu in The Exorcist, and reportedly used all manner of bizarre tactics to augment her voice, including consuming raw eggs and whiskey coupled with chain smoking. McCambridge's performance here in Johnny Guitar is indeed one of the film's highlights. With the way she's able to rile up a mob with fire in her eyes and hate in her voice, you can see the way the character delights in cruelty to others, particularly Vienna. She has virtually zero redeeming qualities as a person, one who, despite all of her privilege and wealth, has a perpetual chip on her shoulder and feels the need to attack and destroy those weaker than her. You can see the other townspeople have the instinctive impulse to hold back a lot of their more murderous tendencies once they realize they've gone too far, but not Emma. She's at her absolute peak of insanity and evil when she finally stirs the pot just enough to get the townspeople to go along with lynching Vienna. The hate and malice in her eyes is palpable. As if to add insult to injury, she sets Vienna's saloon ablaze. I'm just surprised she didn't salt the earth while she was at it. Two of the other major supporting players of note in Johnny Guitar are John Carridine as Old Tom, an employee and friend of Vienna who defends her to the end, and Ernest Borgnine as Bart, a psychotic and double-crossing member of the Dancing Kids posse. Carridine, of course, had a long Hollywood career going back to the 1930s, including a turn as Dracula in several classic Universal horror films. Borgnine was at the beginning of his career at this point, 1 year away from the role that won him the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1955 for Marty. It feels weird to relegate such little distinction to the character for which the movie is titled, but as Johnny Logan, aka Johnny Guitar, Sterling Hayden is perfectly fine, yet not particularly memorable compared to the others. He is the wild card, though, the character that no one aside from Vienna has any insight about. His motives are initially unclear, but he soon becomes nothing more than just the love interest for Vienna and a means to an end. Hayden had several other major roles around this time, including playing the lead in film noirs like The Asphalt Jungle and Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, and later a memorable supporting performance as General Jack D. Ripper in Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. And Joan Crawford was of course one of the biggest movie stars of all time, with a career dating back to the silent era, who had to constantly fight to stay at the top of the industry, winning the Oscar for Best Actress in 1946 for Mildred Pierce. By this time in her career, she was in a bit of a downslope after the demise of the studio system, trying to find new footing. Crawford plays Vienna as a strong-willed woman of principle, a self-made woman who has pulled herself up by the bootstraps to get where she is today. It's never explicitly stated how Vienna amassed the money she has to build her own saloon, but it's heavily implied she worked as a prostitute in the past, but has since left that world behind. It's a past that constantly hangs over her head, one that no one seemingly lets her forget about or is able to move away from no matter how hard she tries. Maybe, except for Johnny. This inner turmoil and torture that is relieved from her shoulders by Johnny exemplifies the power of their romantic relationship and how much they mean to each other. A lot has been said about Johnny Guitar in terms of its underlying themes and what the movie is really all about. In terms of the Western genre, it's definitely unique and stands out. Some have even called Johnny Guitar a feminist Western or an indoor Western, and I can see those as applicable descriptors. While these labels don't have distinct definitions, you can infer what they mean. Usually when you think of a Western, you think of something along the lines of John Wayne or John Ford films, male-centered epics that showcase the great outdoors and the expanse of the untamed West. And that is entirely the opposite of what's presented here, as most of our intimate story takes place inside Vienna's saloon. As well, take Johnny Logan, who, for all intents and purposes, is a most unusual Western hero, and that's because he really isn't the hero or the protagonist, despite being the titular character. Vienna is the lead of Johnny Guitar, which reverses the typical gender roles we expect from a film like this. It's Crawford's Vienna that takes on the inherently more masculine traits of a Western protagonist. She's confident, proud, and defiant, constantly challenging the authority figures of the town to protect her interests and achieve her goals. She traverses the spectrum of masculinity and femininity throughout the picture as her character's destiny becomes more and more entwined with Johnny's return, displayed visually with the choices of her costume design. When we get our first glance of Vienna, she might as well be a man based on the way she's dressed, looking much like a town gunslinger decked out in a black shirt and brown pants combo. After her reunion with Johnny, she gradually starts to don more classically feminine attire, first with skirts and then finally climaxing with her immaculately white gown during the piano scene in Raid on the Saloon, where everything comes crashing down. The cycle reverses itself as the film concludes when her female clothing becomes functionally useless in a fight, and Vienna assumes the clothes of a fallen comrade for her final showdown with Emma. Johnny, by comparison, takes on a much more feminine role in the film. He's basically just the love interest. He exudes a calm, non-confrontational persona, although it's later revealed to be his way of repressing his more temperamental and violent instincts. He has effectively been tamed, is one way of putting it. A big point is made to the fact that Johnny carries no gun. Not that he's a pacifist or a coward by any means, but because Johnny Logan is by far one of the deadliest and best shots in the West, and the thrill of that life consumed him like a drug, he has traded his guns for a guitar so that he can reunite with his one true love. Again, what I like is that these observations are very apparent, but not explicitly put to the forefront, which allows you to think about it in a more meaningful way. And despite all this, it never compromises the core attributes of who these characters are or what they mean to each other. So if you're looking for a Western film that stands out among its contemporaries and offers up some intriguing elements you wouldn't expect from a film of this time, Johnny Guitar is certainly one to see. Joan Crawford puts in a terrific performance accompanied by an equally energetic and memorable turn by Mercedes McCambridge in a thematically complex and always entertaining movie definitely worth a look back. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, please subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, leave a comment below, and we'll see you next time.